Okay, I'm ready for a nap.
With that's it? You're done? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's it. We're done.
Yeah.
I'll let you
Call
guys
it
yardstick.
Yarrick's back, bitches. We're done.
Yeah, I have no real interest in him or I'd cheer for the orcs. I'd be kind of sad there.
You would abandon humanity for the orcs?
I mean, I kind of did with the Eldar and the Votan being my mate too.
I mean, that's fair.
Welcome to Preferred Enemies, the Warhammer 40k podcast that next year will be old enough to drive. I'm your host, Rob.
Kevin?
Dennis?
And Richard.
And yes, that is related twofold, because on one hand, last week we did hit our 15th anniversary, and if you enjoyed listening to the horrible sound quality that was the re-release of our first episode, I apologize. But it was fun to get that back out there, as this is where we started, and happily it was relatively evergreen content because it was about how to get started in 40k. Although listening to it, I did realize that a number of the references were a bit outdated, such as mentioning looking for armies on Craigslist. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
I looked at the show notes and the links to various episodes from the original. Half the links didn't work anymore, as there's been turnover in websites since then. But it was a nice blast of the past.
So you're saying as we move forward, things stay in the past that don't work anymore?
Yeah. I mean, we recorded that episode in like Dennis's kitchen around like a
wasn't
little
the basement?
hand microphone, sitting at a glass table.
Oh,
Yes.
so we were at the glass table on that one? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And it was a
Yeah.
thunderstorm outside too. We
guys
chose
really
the
didn't know what you
best
were
way to
doing.
start. We really had no clue.
Hey, we had a mic and a mission.
That's pretty much it. And it's carried us this far to minor Z-list celebrity. So we'll go with it. The other reason becoming old enough to drive matters is because in this episode, we're going to be looking at the new Return of Yarrick narrative supplement from Games Workshop. Thank you, Games Workshop, for providing a copy of that for us to review. And the Armored Gauntlet rules that expand vehicle rules for 40k. But before we get to that, it's news and new releases time. But more importantly, it's 11th edition update time.
It's 11th edition o'clock, bitches.
Yep.
Yep.
And every week so far, they've been dropping 2 to 3 articles about upcoming rules. They've also shown off some models. We get a Vanguard veteran, which is certainly a Space Marine with a jump pack. Yeah. Sure is. On the other hand, orcs get a new knob model and a new weird boy who both look pretty good.
That weird boy is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
That
Weird
weird boy.
boy's the right amount.
Yeah. But more importantly, the rules. And we've got 5 different rules articles that all kind of lead into each other, which I kind of like how they've been doing that, how they've been feeding one into the other and saying like, okay, so here's what we've explained so far. Next week or next time, we'll talk about how that applies to this. And then next week, how that applies to this, and so on. So it's been building on itself very nicely. Starting off, the new detachment rules. They did clarify that there are, because I think when they first dropped this, they said there were 70 new or updated detachments. This one clarified 70 new detachments on top of everything that we already have. So we're going to have 200 plus detachments for 11th edition right out the gate.
Man, that sounds easy to balance, right, Rob?
Oh, amazingly easy. What I find interesting, though, is because they're allowing you to take multiple detachments, every detachment is going to be worth 1 or more detachment points. And depending on how powerful the detachment is, it may be worth 1, 2, or 3 points. So something that affects your entire army and gives your entire army a buff may be worth 3 points. And that's also interesting because the number of detachment points you are allowed is based on your battle size. in a 1,000 point game, you only have access to 2 detachment points, which means at an incursion level game, you cannot play the more powerful detachments.
Yep. Which I kind of like.
Yeah, I think I like this. I want to see it play out, but the first instinct I have calls out of this is redesigned formations. Just because you could have multiple formations in your army, and that's kind of what this feels like. But the fact that you'll be limited to 1 or 2 in a 2,000 point game, or in a 1,000 point game, or 1, 2, 3 in the 2,000 point game. Oh wait, no, it's 3 detachment points. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because I'm sure, and I think some of the examples they said was like Ravenwing and Deathwing might each be 1,000 point detachment. And so you could have both of them in the same thing, and their rules won't overlap with each other, but it'll have that feel of Ravenwing getting there, then Deathwing getting there type thing.
Right. And having access to all that stuff. It's also why they've bumped up the enhancement limit from 3 to 4 to allow you to have more enhancements from multiple detachments. But that's also capped for 1,000 point games, 2 enhancements at 1,000 point games, and also an official unit list or unit limit of 2 for 2 of each unit in incursion games. But that's doubled for Battle Line, and it's the classic rule of 3 at 2,000 points.
I mean,
so
that feels pretty standard for what I've seen for, because even right now, 1,000 point games are 2 of each unit.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I didn't see in here, well, I would kind of like to see is in 1,000 point games, if you limit down the vehicles to like 1 per and the characters per 1 per, would be also interesting, because they did that in the Maelstrom, but maybe that's just Maelstrom rules.
Yeah, I think that is just Maelstrom rules, because like there are rules in Maelstrom that are similar to things we're going to be talking about, but are slightly different. But you can definitely see like maybe that was like where they kind of, maybe Maelstrom is where we got like an early version of this, and then they've refined it for 11th edition to apply to a larger scale.
Especially with the enhancing units.
Yeah. And also they do specify soup armies not allowed. You are still taking all your detachments from the same codex, which does mean we won't get to have things like taking a Gene Stealer cult and a Imperial Guard detachment together to make Brood Brothers. It'll still be Brood Brothers will be a detachment.
Yeah, that will actually make it, I think, easier, because I know Brood Brothers and for like Emperor's Children, you only had 1 detachment you could take demons with. If demons is its own detachment, then you can tack it onto any Emperor's Children other detachment and have your demons there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I'm hoping for there, is they actually allow you to mix and match that way. So that would be better, and I'm hoping that's one of those 70 new detachments. Or at least making changing the rules on the Carnival of Excess or the other like god-related demon detachments and making them work.
They did say
similarly.
update, so
They did say some of them will be. They're gonna, with some of the things we're going to talk about. They will have to update a number of things, because there's some rules and enhancements and stratagems, things that just don't work properly anymore with these changes. They do mention like, what if a detachment features a unit type where there are no characters, which is an issue we've seen before. And so they have changed some of the enhancements to be upgrades, which can be applied to non-character units. And actually a single upgrade could be applied to up to 3 non-character units, although you do have to pay the points cost for each unit. But that's really cool. And that's something we had kind of talked about, the possibility of being able to upgrade. You know, so we saw a little bit of that in Maelstrom, but this is doing it even more so. I think that's cool. It's more options for detachment building, which I like. They do also specify character units are going to be considered either leader or support, and every unit can have 1 of each. So we're going to have to see a lot of units eroded, so the characters are 1 or the other.
I kind of like
so many
this.
lieutenants.
So all the lieutenants. It's lieutenants all day long.
Well, I was just like thinking Eldar with the Warlocks, and then Sisters have like others. And it's nice because I think some of those, at least in Eldar, you had to have the Farseer, then you could attach a Warlock. So this feels like it's just cleaning it up of, you can have 1 leader, 1 support, whatever they can join, done without having all this extra rules.
Depending on how they classify certain characters, you might actually see characters back on the table. Because, like, how many apothecaries did you see? like in a Space Marine list. You don't see them very often, other than like maybe one in like a super unit. So putting things like that as like support might actually encourage them to be used again. So
Yeah, no, I like that. And it makes army building easier. They also did specify, this is something they didn't specify in this article, but they had mentioned during the initial reveal that leaders are attached now officially during army building, which is what people were doing anyway.
Mhm.
But like in the mission rules, technically you didn't apply it until like you showed up at the table. Now it's you set them up while you're creating your list, and leaders don't lose their abilities when the unit they're attached to dies. So all those abilities say when leading unit is just going to be models in this unit.
Yay.
That is huge.
Yeah, I like that a lot better.
And then the biggest change for detachments, and these all seem like big changes for detachments, being able to take multiples and changes to leaders and enhancements. But I think the most wide-ranging change, and the one that leads into the next piece, is that your detachment or detachments will have you choosing a force disposition, or it will apply a force disposition onto your army. And 1 of 5, there are Take and Hold, Disruption, Purge the Foe, Priority Assets, and Reconnaissance. And these matter because that determines what mission you're playing.
See,
So
I know when they announced this, I was screaming in my head, man, this sounds like Maelstrom, because in Maelstrom, it's not chosen by like what army or detachment you play. You pick which type of battle you want to happen, and between your type and your opponent's type, well, that's the battleground you fight on. So it's like, oh wow, is this another preview of 11?
It kind of is a little bit, except these are applied at the army building level now. And so that takes us to the next article on how armies affect your mission. And these are all on the Warhammer community website, so you can follow along if you want. I can attach the links to the show notes. So we talked about the detachments and how they give you force dispositions. And so the idea is that the detachment you pick should encourage you to play a particular way. So, for example, like a Khorne Berserker unit shouldn't necessarily be rushing to stand on objectives. It should be pushing forward to kill the enemy. So those are likely going to be more Purge the Foe kind of detachments.
But what if I want to stand on objectives?
Yeah. What if my foes are on objectives?
Well, then you have to.
Yeah.
And that is why the missions you take, like the disposition you have and your opponent's disposition, combine to determine what mission you are playing. And when I say you, I mean you, because your opponent will be playing the reverse mission, basically their version of what if we combine these two and what mission comes up. So, for example, if you are playing a Purge the Foe detachment or army against a Disruption army, then your mission is Punishment. At the start of your turn, select up 1 to 3 units that are on the battlefield or within range of objectives, and or that destroyed 1 or more friendly units in the previous turn. If you can't, select 1 unit that's just on the battlefield. Those units become condemned, and you get 5 victory points every time a condemned unit leaves the battlefield this turn. And then you still want to control objectives because their mission is going to be doing things on objectives. So you want to kill their units and get on their objectives and then control their bonus objective. They're going to have a mission that will create a bonus objective. So you're going to be interacting with their mission, but doing it your way, not their way. And that does mean unless you both have the same force disposition, you and your opponent are playing different primary objectives. It's asymmetrical play, baby.
Do you like that?
I do like that. But I like that it's asymmetrical in that you're just playing different missions, not so much that the forces are wildly different or that you're deploying differently necessarily or anything like that. Some missions will have actions, some won't. They give an example of a Disruption army against a Take and Hold army, where the Disruption army is trying to control terrain areas and make them trapped. And then if an enemy unit is within a trapped terrain area and then is destroyed, you get points for that as well. And they'd say, like in a pickup game, you could choose a different force disposition ahead of the battle, but in a tournament setting, you lock it in when you submit your list. But that also means, since you know, like, hey, when I submit my list, I'm playing a take and hold army, that means you'll only ever have to track 5 possible missions, because you know there are 5 possible matchups.
Or less if you're metagaming.
Which, I mean, does mean, like, yeah, you're not going to be really surprised. You might end up having to play the same mission over and over, depending on, like, what armies you face if you keep hitting. And you could end up playing, like, mirror matches if, like, I'm playing Purge the Foe and I keep running into Purge the Foe opponents. I guess we are just playing the same mission all day.
But at least you're different armies, hopefully, so that will
Yes.
at least make it somewhat different.
And otherwise, the mission deck is going to be, other than you determine the primaries by your opponent, rather than a tournament organizer setting the primaries, which this does take a lot of work off tournament organizers. Your mission packet is basically, hey, here are the basic rules for the event. Be cool.
It's going to require more work from the tournament organizers between rounds, I think. But yeah, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how this actually gets implemented, because I don't know. I don't know. I have a feeling that some TOs are probably going to just continue doing it the way they were before.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see, because now they do mention, like, the mission deck will have twists in them still. There's random deployment cards. That's something the tournament organizers can control, saying, like, okay, first round everybody's playing Dawn of War. Second round everybody's playing Hammer and Anvil. Like that you could control from the TO standpoint. That they talk about secondary objectives, how those are going to function primarily the same, although with one notable change. Instead of you only ever have 2, and if you get one early that just sucks and you're stuck with it, or you have to discard it and hope you get something good later, or you get one that, like, I can't score this yet, but I could score it later in the game. Now, instead of just being stuck with the 2, you just keep accruing them. You draw 2 every turn, and now it's like second turn, you have 4 to choose from. Third turn, if you haven't scored any yet, you'll have 6 to choose from. You're still capped at 15 points per round on secondary objectives, so you can't just, like, have one game where it's like, all right, I scored all of them now.
Yeah, in my mind, I see this as a nerf for the way I played it, because one of those secondaries was always a command point for me, it seemed like. Mm-hmm. And now I can't ditch one for a command point.
That is true. I mean, well, the thing is that could still be in there. We don't know, but you're not, like, they may change that. It may not be a thing. They haven't clarified on that.
Zero CP general stratagem saying you can ditch it.
They say, and yeah, twists are going to, modify core rules. Hopefully they'll be better than the twists in the last chapter approved.
Twists, I like the concept. I just think they've never played out well.
Yeah.
They didn't mention anything about, like, gambits, secret missions, challenges, stuff like that. So those might be gone. Maybe they're hoping that the asymmetric play will lead to less lopsided games.
I think it will, but we'll have to see.
Yeah. They did mention that there is a twist called Mirrored World that just lets you play the same primary regardless. So if you just want to play the same mission, you can. It's totally an option.
Oh, I thought there was one where you and your opponent swapped primary missions.
Yeah, they do have one that allows players to swap, but then there's also a postscript note saying an optional twist that lets you both use the same primary. So there's both. If
twists are like that, that might be more interesting than the current twist they have.
Yeah. They also mentioned that there is a mystery deck that we haven't even heard about yet. That's going to be in the launch box. No clue.
It's not a psychic deck. I don't care. Oh.
Now, beyond missions and tying into missions, they talk about terrain. So we know the terrain rules are changing, and I would say this qualifies for my guess that we're going to see a shift up of the terrain rules. This definitely qualifies. So first off, we've got terrain features and terrain areas. They are 2 different things. Like, the terrain features are the actual pieces of scenery. Terrain areas are what they are placed on. They will always be placed on terrain areas. Terrain areas have standardized footprints. We'll get to the list of those in a second. Some of the big changes, we mentioned this during the preview. They've kind of clarified it a bit more. The hidden rule, which is similar to the lurking rule from Maelstrom. Infantry, beast, and swarm models inside a terrain area are hidden as long as you didn't shoot in the current or preceding player turn. So like at the beginning of the game, you are definitely going to be hidden if you are inside that terrain piece. And when you're hidden, you basically have 15-inch lone op. That also means that an all-assault army that is just not going to shoot, not even pistols, can just move from piece of terrain to piece of terrain and always be hidden. Although
like
at a certain
that.
point, you're going to get close enough, somebody's going to be able to see you and shoot you.
Yeah, but I'm also close enough to charge at that point.
Exactly. And then infantry, beasts, and swarm units that are in obscuring terrain, which most terrain is going to be obscuring, automatically gets the benefit of cover, which is a penalty to ballistic skill rather than an armor save bonus, which I think is better. And
Yeah.
because it's a penalty to ballistic skill, it still will stack with other benefits and like bonuses and penalties to the 2-hit roll, because those are two different things. And then missions will have recommended terrain layouts, and this is where things are going to get a little bit weird for tournament play. Like we mentioned, the trapped terrain mission, they showed the other half of that, which is the take and hold version of that, which is just controlling objectives and getting more points if you control objectives in your opponent's territory. And then they show 2 of the 3 possible terrain layouts for that mission. And that's like different terrain layouts based on the deployment map. So I'm guessing there's going to be 3 deployment layouts, like 3 possible deployment options and a map for each of them. It's at least that's the examples they're giving here.
Mm-hmm.
And there, you'll notice that there's a lot of long pieces of terrain. There's pieces of terrain that are made from 2 combined terrain feature bases. There's terrain that is marked yellow and terrain that is marked green. There's terrain that is marked as being objectives and being also at blocking line of sight or being obscuring, like what does and doesn't block line of sight. There's a lot on here, a lot of measurements, some down to the 1/4 inch. And that's going to be interesting to set up at the tournament level. We don't know what mission we're going to be playing. We don't know what deployment zone. Hopefully some of these layouts will be standardized.
Yeah, they would almost have to be. Otherwise, that's going to be a real nightmare for organizers.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I'll note is, at least looking at this terrain layout, in the previous edition, they tried to measure things from like a board edge or the center. This one, they're measured from everywhere. So it feels like board size is now standardized. It's not such and such or larger. Because if you go larger on some of these, the terrain layout won't work with the measurements they've got.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it looks like they're mostly measuring some from like table edges and corners. So yeah, if you're on a slightly larger table, everything's going to be just a little bit further out, and yeah, it won't quite line up right. So yeah, 44 by 60 is official standard now. Like that is it. They do mention that like the longer pieces of terrain are still obscuring, but that they don't necessarily have to be ruins. They're trying to get away from everything having to be a ruin. So like, do you prefer trees? Do you want pipelines, barricades? I'm looking forward to my Mechanicus terrain being useful again, because you
Yeah.
can just put that on there and say, yep, it's obscuring. It doesn't have to be a ruin. It's just, it's an obscuring piece of terrain. But they also do want, they want the terrain features. It's not just the terrain area, but the terrain features are what's going to determine line of sight and if larger units are obscured. But also they want terrain to have height to it as well. So they've changed the plunging fire rule a bit, that if you are 3 inches above ground level and you are shooting at a unit at ground level, you get +1 ballistic skill. So they talked about like, hey, a unit of Devastator Marines could get up onto, which is funny because that's an archaic phrase because Devastators don't really matter anymore. They're not.
Yeah,
primaries.
but nobody wants to acknowledge the Nerf gun Marines.
Right, yeah.
Escalators are cool.
Honestly, midway through that sentence, I forgot what the actual name of the unit was. I was like, I don't know. I've never actually seen them on the table. So
So you're saying I need to bring some so you can see them on a table.
Sure, whatever. Whatever makes you feel good, man.
But yeah, basically you could have like a unit of heavy weapons sit in a building, bide their time. If they're 15 inches back, they can't be shot at because they're hidden, and then shoot at somebody on the ground and be attacking with +1 ballistic skill, which that's cool. It gives you a reason to want to put stuff higher up. They also apply it to towering vehicles. So like knights, if they are shooting at something within 12 inches and it's on the ground, they also get plunging fire. So knights get better at shooting little guys on the ground, which I don't know if we needed that, but it's there.
It's fine. It's fine. Knights are fine. We didn't need them. They're good. They're fine.
Well, do you know what else that does for knights? It lets them like shoot better at the no, they still can't shoot at the thing they're engaged with. Never mind.
Yeah.
Oh no, they can. They got big guns. They got big guns never tired. They just can't fire blast weapons at it.
Yeah.
But okay, so then that's -1. So this reduces that -1.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how all of these play together. Like we're getting an incomplete picture on this, so it's I want to withhold complete judgment until we get all of the information. But yeah, it's
true. But then
feels like it's
this
definitely gonna
slowly like this gets us accustomed to things.
Oh, for sure.
For when it does
For sure.
drop, because otherwise, if it just dropped with no fanfare, everyone would be freaking out.
Oh no, absolutely. This is definitely them like managing the changes and stuff. But I don't know. I want to avoid being like, oh my gosh, this is going to do the XYZ. It's like, well, it could. We have to see what other changes they haven't announced yet or haven't told us about yet. So
right,
we'll see.
They do give us the standard sizes of terrain footprints. So a standard terrain set uses 4 large rectangles, 7 inches by 11.5, 2 large right angle triangles, 8 by 11.5, and in a couple of the layouts they've shown, those combine to make one big square or one big rectangle. 4 medium rectangles, 6 by 4, 2 long lines, 10 by 2.5, and 4 short lines, 6 by 2.5. And they are going to have those terrain footprints available. I imagine they'll also be in the launch box, but they also say, hey, you can make your own terrain footprints to match your table. And companies have already announced, or already have for sale these footprints.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like neoprene and acrylic.
It makes sense that they're putting it out there. I'm sure GW is going to put something out as well as soon as 11th edition launches. So
they said as much. So I imagine those will be like push out cardboard, but it'll be pretty easy to cut these. Yeah, I've seen a number of people on Reddit like already making like trying out the terrain. We've got a couple of the terrain layouts shown. They're already making templates and kind of trying to get used to the feel of it. So I am glad that they have revealed this information earlier, because like you said, this keeps people from freaking out. It lets them kind of get used to it, start trying this out, playing with it, kind of seeing how it feels. As far as the terrain objectives themselves, we had an article on that. Or rather than objectives existing as tokens that units need to stand to, they are now secured by claiming a terrain area. Not all terrain areas will be objectives, but all objectives will be terrain areas. All terrain areas will provide cover, so like you won't be standing on a circle out in the middle of nowhere. Like if you're taking an objective, by default, it's going to be a piece of area terrain which will allow you to be hidden, will provide cover. They do mention vehicles cannot use terrain areas to gain cover, so no more like, oh, this vehicle's toe in, so it gets cover. It's now vehicles and anything that's not infantry, beast, or swarm gets cover by being obscured, by actually being blocked by the terrain pieces, not the terrain areas. They also specify that if you look at the objective maps, a number of the terrain pieces, I mentioned they're color-coded green and yellow. The yellow ones, you can just move over without penalty. So even though you'll have a lot of terrain and some tight corridors, vehicles won't necessarily be blocked out, which that is good, because that's always been one of the iffy parts on terrain is like, okay, well, now I can't take like a Land Raider or, any larger vehicle because if it's in my deployment zone, I'll never get it out of here.
Well, one of the big things that came up is like the new Defiler has like a huge base, like 120 millimeters, like that. It's like
it's 160.
Yeah, huge base. And like, unless it has the ability to move over terrain, like it's going to get boxed in. So
right.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how all these will work.
Yeah, and I think the Defiler rules have like ignoring terrain under a certain height like built in.
Right.
And like I know they had to do that with Fulgrim too, who also has a huge base. He's still not good, but they tried to adjust for it.
So I'm interested to see how all of this will tie together, and as we learn more about it, because on its surface, you get. I get like you're saying, like the trickle feed of like one change at a time, and how's this going to go? But like I've seen a lot of people freak out and go, "Wait a minute, this means this works," and it's like, no, there's more coming. Like this one change isn't probably the only change, so there's other things that are going to impact it. That stuff that we don't even know yet. So I would recommend everybody read these and like think about them, but not freak out until we get the full picture.
Right. They also like they show a diagram of OC still works the same way. It's just rather than being within range, it's like, are you on the objective terrain? That's what determines how many models and thus how much OC is applied. They also did have a little note in here. When you're battle shocked, your OC is not 0. Your OC is dash. You have no OC stat when you are battle shocked.
Which that does change like the Dark Angels one, where if you were OC 0, you suddenly got to be 1. So it's like,
Yeah, there's the more and more I see of this, like there's going to be a lot of errata to the point of we're going to have like faction packs. Even though technically your codex still applies. Yeah, but it's going to be about as accurate as a Mechanicus Codex at this point. It's going to be so full of errata and changes. It's like, yeah, you're going to need the digital add-on pack to really be able to play the game. Maybe
GW will sell physical errata that like are like stickers that you can just peel off and put over your codex to... I don't want to give them more ideas.
What, you want to kick it old school the way the old chapter approved used to work?
No, I could see GW selling us a $50 physical errata pack though, with like stickers to put in your book, and I hate that concept.
Although this calls back to something, and I want to give credit to one of our patrons, Touch of Oblivion, who got to talk with one of the painters at Adepticon. Actually, did a painting class, and was talking with him about like the digital, like why are some apps paywalled and some aren't? Why are digital rules going to be a thing? And it confirmed a couple of things that we had heard about, like how the game divisions inside Games Workshop work as far as like sales and funding, that apps have to be paid for by the department. So Kill Team is a separate, like the specialist games department is paying for the Kill Team app, not the company as a whole. So they can choose to make their stuff not paywalled, but the 40K team may choose not to do that. There's not a universal company push one way or another. And the painting teacher said, he'd love to see the apps not as paywalled or be accessible through a Warhammer Plus subscription or offer a flat fee. But one of the issues with that is Games Workshop has a very old-fashioned way of tracking profits and earnings for the rules team, and they track that by the number of books sold. So unless they can adjust things so that, we'll also track digital copies of rules sold, that's not likely to happen. It could, but it might not.
This goes back to the other thing that we've heard, like GW's like weird accounting and like, we have to do this, which as an accountant blows my mind that like that type of logic has so much control. But it's like, well, we have to separate out and remove these units from lines because we can't track sales across product lines. That's the easiest frickin' thing in the world to do. Like, that should not be driving your decisions. Like, we can't track digital sales, so we're not going to... Like, that is so insane to me that, like, I would love to work for a company where accountants have that much power. because it would be nice to actually have some control over things. But what the hell? That blows my mind.
Yeah, it is a very weird way of doing things. But so are we likely to get digital codexes? Unknown. I mean, they could surprise us. Surprise us. I'm not going to say it's impossible. Maybe they'll finally get with the program, but it seems unlikely. Let's just put it that way. And I also thought it was funny, like going back to the article here, that, they do mention again, not every objective has to be that's not to say every objective must now be a building or a tree line or an important mess of craters. You're still welcome to mark them with 40 millimeter bases. So like your old objective markers that are not neoprene circles can still be used should the mission need it. And they mention you might need to defuse a bomb or pick up and move relics. So not everything will be a terrain piece, even though everything's supposed to be a terrain piece. This does answer my question of in Maelstrom, if you're moving things around, you don't have to pick up the building and walk off with it. But they every mission should be between 5 and 6 objectives, but it's not going to be like the old maps where it's like, okay, this deployment map says you have objectives here, 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 and here, regardless of what mission we're playing. It's like, no, the mission determines the layout, which determines what are objectives. Not every mission will have the same number of objectives. And it also depends on your mission. If I'm playing a Purge the Foe, I don't really care about having models that have a lot of OC. I can focus on killier stuff instead, which is good. I do like that. Now, they did also specify every army will have access to every disposition one way or another, which means, yes, there will technically be a World Eater's army that wants to hold objectives.
Sure, cowards, maybe.
But speaking of World Eaters and other melee armies, then we get the last most recent article, which is the changes to the fight phase and combat. And there's a lot to unpack in this one. First off, engagement range is now 2 inches instead of 1 inch. And no, you cannot stop within engagement range. That is still true, which means you can have 2 bubbles of you can't stop here. However, you can move through engagement range. Every unit can. So all those abilities that say like, oh, this unit can move through engagement range, like on Demonettes in the Carnival of Excess, yeah, that doesn't matter anymore. Everybody can do that. So your only hope of screening is if you can screen thick enough to keep somebody from moving through and still being beyond 2 inches. But that is in the movement phase, and otherwise, if you want to move inside engagement range and stop there, you have to do it while charging. They do show us the full charge rules, and something else to note: rules are now officially numbered the way they are in Age of Sigmar. So this is charge move rule 11.04, which will make things easier for judges.
Absolutely.
Like if somebody says, I have a question about charge move. Okay, the rule number 11.04, you can go right to it and read the rules right there. And they even cross-reference until the end of this turn, each model in your unit has the fight's first ability, rule 24.13. So everything is very cross-referenced by rule number. That's good. That's good organization. I sometimes find the Age of Sigmar rules read like stereo instructions now that they're broken out like this.
Yeah.
But it does make it easier to adjudicate, so that's fine. We mentioned this last episode, but they've kind of expanded upon it, that you roll your charge roll before you choose charge targets. And I think this is going to be one of the things that's going to hang people up the most, at least at first. I think people will get used to it, but when you decide this unit is going to charge, you roll your charge roll. Like you declare a charge, you roll your charge roll. That now creates an aura of any units within this aura are legal charge targets. So if you roll a 7, only units that have models within 7 inches measured base to base are legal targets. Now, that is even though your engagement range is 2 inches. So if you roll a 7, you cannot pick a unit that's at 9 inches, even though technically you could end up in engagement range with it because it's not in that original target range.
I think I see your point, Rob. It will be difficult for people to adjust to it, but I think this streamlines it better of There's no more, is this here? Is this here? Okay, it's a 9-inch charge. I need just a little bit. So it's actually like an 8.5. So yeah, measure, get it. That's your range you can charge.
Right.
Yeah. I like this better because you at least then will, not always, because obviously you can still have situations where you don't have anything in range, but you're going to have more options. And one of the worst feelings when you're playing like a pure melee army is you run up, you do all the stuff, you survive the shooting, you bounce the train, you do all the stuff, you get there, and then you fail the 4-inch charge. And it's like, cool, I'm just going to sit here while you shoot me again. So at least now you have the options.
Happen. But it can still happen.
It can still happen, but now you have more options. So it's like, okay, I can't make this charge. I can't make this long bomb charge into the unit that I want to, but at least I can like wipe out this unit that's closer. So,
unless you roll a 3,
right? So you'd still roll poorly and not be able to assault anything, but this gives you more options. So I like that. But yeah, the order of operations will change a little bit.
Yeah, and multi-charges are still a thing. You still, if you choose multiple targets, you still have to end up engaged with all of them. You do not have to end up base to base. They say basically each move model must end its move closer to one or more charge targets. Each model that can end its move within an inch of a charge target must do so. Each unit that can end its move engaged with one or more charge targets must do so. They haven't clarified here, but I'm wondering if you are only engaged if you are within, it used to be within an inch, or base to base with a unit that's within an inch. It just sounds like it's going to be every model has a 2-inch bubble, and as long as you're within 2 inches, you get to apply to the combat.
That's where I think this is leaning towards.
Yeah. You can't be engaged with anything that is not a charge target, which also means your opponent can kind of set up corridors where like you would have to multi-charge because it's the only way you could end up, which generally you might want to, but if you wanted to put all your attacks towards a single thing, your opponent can now set up areas where you can't, or maybe you can put everything towards a single thing, but now your opponent gets to bring multiple units in against you and kind of pincher you in. So it does have some interesting tactical applications. They do also, one of the reasons they increased the engagement range was also to say, if somebody's an inch away from a wall, you can't fight them. Nope. As long as they're within 2 inches, they're yours.
Right. See, and I'm still getting used to all of that because I had to get trained the inch against away from the wall because I was more, you can't see me, you can't charge me, but they're like, yeah, no, I can go through a wall because I'm infantry, so I can charge you. So I don't know. I have to relearn that, and if I have any melee or non-melees that want, they'll just have to, I guess, be in the center of a terrain piece then.
Yeah, I mean, they say like terrain will still help you limit how many units can get into a charge, but they can't necessarily stop you from getting engaged. You actually have to physically be far enough away from them that they can't get to you.
I do like that.
They also said ingress moves, which is now like all your deep strike and coming in from strategic reserves. This is a classification is officially called an ingress move. Instead of being 9 inches, they are all 8 inches. However, you would still need a 9 to charge someone out of deep strike, because if you rolled an 8, the maximum range would be 8 to target, but you'd have to be more than 8 away. So you would still need to roll a 9 to charge out of deep strike. Now, I've seen some people point out that a 2-inch charge would fail. Like a 2-inch charge always fails because you have to be more than 2 inches away from an enemy unit.
Yep, that is correct, yeah.
And that also means if a unit is 3 inches away, because if a unit is 3 inches away from you and you roll a 2, you cannot, even though you could engage with it relatively easily, you cannot choose it as a legal target. So a snake eyes on the charge roll is bad because it means you can charge no one.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't mind rules that are like, hey, 1 always fails and, stuff like that. So
yeah, this just feels like a continuation of 1 always fails.
Yeah.
No, and that's fair. Yeah. Pile-in moves have changed. Everybody does their pile-in moves before any fights go on. So you declare your charges, you carry out all your charges, then the attacker does all their pile-in moves, then the opponent does all their pile-ins. So you're doing all your moving around and shuffling before anybody's rolling dice. Combat works primarily the same way, except it starts with the attacker now. So fights first will not help you defensively nearly as much.
Yeah.
It just determines if you can alternate in that earlier stage of combat or not. Also, the other change is instead of going like currently it goes like defender fight first, attacker fight first, defender fight first, attacker. You go back and forth with that. Then once you're through all the fight first, defender not fight first, attacker not fight first, and back and forth. Now it is attacker starts. You can only choose attack firsts until all the attack firsts are used up, and then you just keep alternating.
Mm-hmm.
So the timing is such that it's not automatically going to default to the attacker or the defender after all the charges go and after all the fights first go. Because like if attacker and defender each have one fights first, then attacker gets to choose next rather than the defender getting to double dip.
Right. But I think this is more designed for the flip side of that. If you had 3 attackers and no defenders with fights first, but the basic rule is attacker goes first, then technically they'd get 4 if they had someone still engaged. So at least with the back and forth,
they would get 3, and then whoever would normally be next in line gets first.
Right.
So
no, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Is because they've made this rule, it lets the defender actually kind of circumvent the attacker goes rule first for the overall phase because they don't have any fights first.
Now, one other thing they added is an overrun fight. And I think this is brilliant because how many times have you had multiple units fighting and one unit just wipes the target and the other unit has nothing to do? Especially they've already piled in.
This has never occurred to me as a World Leaders player. Never had.
Never ever.
Never ever.
Never ever. So it's like, well, I charged, but I guess I'm just going to sit here picking my nose because I can't do anything. Now, if there is a target that you could pile into with this unit that you like the next unit you've selected, if they can pile into an enemy unit and get engaged, they can just get a second pile in move and keep fighting. That is huge for melee armies.
Yeah, that's dope.
Like the example they give is somebody destroys, like a demon prince destroys a transport, and the sisters like emergency disembark from the transport and get out. They're too far away from the Khorne berserkers who were engaged with the transport as well. Now the Khorne berserkers can overrun and get engaged with the sisters and fight them.
Yeah. Now this solves a huge problem because like that's one of those things that was always annoying about like last edition. You assault a vehicle, a transport, you destroy the transport, and then the people inside just stand around because like, well, I can't fight them because they weren't a target, so I can't declare anything. So this fixes that, which I really like.
Yeah. And just the only rule is they had to be engaged at the beginning of the fight phase, which they were.
Yep.
So. And then once all the fighting is done, consolidation is done the same way that pile-in. Attacker does all the consolidation, then defender does all their consolidation. So, yeah, this like there are some significant changes, especially in timing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the charge roll and the change and the addition of overrun, I think, are the biggest changes. Fights first is somewhat of a change. There's not a lot of armies that make a lot of use of fights first. I feel really bad for the Emperor's Children players who already had nothing and have more taken away from them. But,
hey, maybe there'll be revisions.
There's going to have to be.
Maybe Flawless Blades will actually get a bone and be good for a month or two.
I just played my first game with it with Emperor's Children, and I made the mistake of playing them against Necrons, which is a hard counter for Emperor's Children.
Yeah,
don't tell me that, Rob. My next 2 games, I'm fighting Tau and Necrons in our Crusade. So
I will tell you, Emperor's Children's army rule actively hurts you against Necrons because you cannot overcommit.
Oh, I only have 4 units, so I can't overcommit anyway.
Well, okay, yeah. I will say, like, my units punch relatively hard, although if they don't finish something off, that's a problem. But I was doing a lot of trading, but they ended up, I couldn't trade enough, and in that entire game, I killed 4 units.
Have you considered the tactic of rolling dice better?
I was rolling dice well, apparently. My opponent had 2 Doomsday Arcs, and on multiple turns, he managed to roll 1 on the number of shots.
Oh, wow.
Including one time when he spent a command point to reroll and rolled a 1 again.
Yep.
His body is a machine that turns command points rerolls from 1s to 1s. And he was like, afterwards, he's like, man, as we talked about the game and the army's strengths and weaknesses, he's like, man, you should have played anybody else on my team. I feel real bad now. I'm like, dude, this would have sucked for anyway. Here are the stats. Emperor's Children is the worst army in the game right now.
Yeah.
But they look cool.
They look fantastic, but yeah, they're in a rough spot. I do think that the changes to Hidden will be good for them. Yeah. I do think I think the terrain changes are good for Emperor's Children. I think the Overrun's going to be good for any melee focused army. I'm curious to see how much errata and how many things are going to have to change in armies to make this all work. We don't know what the next rule update is going to be. We know Monday we're going to get another model preview, and they're going to be releasing more rules. I imagine we're going to finish up the new rules in April, and I imagine May is when we're going to start seeing detachment information and actual faction.
That could
specific information that would fit previous patterns, and then June we get the actual release.
Yeah, and I think that would make sense. I'm going to do my big guess. They're going to have a big preview at the Dallas Open. It's my big guess.
Yeah, they'll probably that'll probably be that'll be when it probably goes up for pre-order, and they'll do some streaming games to show it off.
Yeah, because didn't there the one in Europe the week before?
I don't recall.
I think they were doing one in the one in the Netherlands is at the end of April. So the 23rd through 22nd. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do previews on that one. And the Birmingham's the week after Dallas. So
okay, then that's probably the bigger. Dallas might be talk about it somewhat, and then Birmingham might be the big. Here we go, guys.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. But I suspect that we'll get more information from all of these.
Yeah. But that is everything that's been released for 11th edition, and it is shaping up to be quite the shakeup for the game. This is going to change a lot of stuff.
It feels like a bigger shakeup than I was expecting, but it's just enough that it's not sending us back to indexes.
Right. Although, again, I think there's going to be so much errata, it'll feel almost like index, but with enough of the rule, it's going to feel more like the changes between a 5th and 6th edition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that bodes really well because 6th edition was so highly regarded.
Or even the changes of 4th to 5th edition.
Yeah. Yeah.
When because almost more a change from 5th to 4th edition, because 4th edition was when you could still have combats roll into each other, and that went away in 5th edition, I think.
Yeah. I look forward to being able to roll up an entire army in one round of combat.
I don't know if you'll be able to do quite that, but with overruns, you'll be able to get a little bit of that feeling again.
Right.
I'm intrigued by the changes in terrain. I want to get some templates, either put them together or find one of the pick up one of the third-party sets and kind of get a feel for how the terrain's going to play.
Why don't you just get fabric and cut them in the shapes, Rob, with green fabric, and then you can put trees on them?
Yeah. I'm happy to see that we're not going to be necessarily looking at just ruins, a bunch of square ruins all over the place. I think encouraging people, because that is addressing one of the big critiques of 10th edition, is everything is L-shaped ruins, and encouraging people to say it's not what kind of object it is, but it's the terrain area and that it obscures, allows you to do forest tables and badlands tables and mechanicus tables. That's actually going to help narrative play, because you can have all these different thematic tables and still have them function similarly. I'm curious to see what the full 25 mission options are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's combat and everything. Those are numerous changes. The mission structure and the detachment structure, I think are the biggest foundational changes. And I don't think we have a good sense of what the impact of that is going to be until we start seeing like what these detachments actually look like. It is, you know, it is nice. Like, we're not changing unit profiles a ton. We're not changing detachment rules a ton. The detachment system is still working. It's working well enough that we want to keep using it. I am a little concerned that having 2 or even 3, because you could have 3 single point detachments at the 2,000 point level, which does mean somebody's going to have like 18 stratagems to shuffle around. I'm worried a little bit about stratagem bloat in that regard, but if they're focused enough so that the stratagem, you know, which in the past we've always said, hey, detachments are better if the stratagems have more general use but are better for your focused units. This almost makes it feel like the opposite. Like, you only want the stratagems to focus on the units that the detachment is built around.
Okay, maybe this is something I don't know. I thought stratagems were also going to get limited, and each detachment would have like less stratagems, and it would be based on the number of points. Maybe I just am mishearing something.
The thing on stratagems was you couldn't stack stratagems anymore.
Well, that's
like, if a unit was targeted by a stratagem, they could not be targeted by another stratagem that phase. So like the example of you couldn't re-roll a charge roll and then tank shock at the same time.
Well, I like my idea, even though it's probably too late for GW to implement it. If
they may be, I mean, that could still be coming. They just may not have given us all the information yet. Just because a chart says like, hey, this many enhancements and this many of each model, or this many of each unit, that doesn't mean that there's more limitations on top of that. We haven't seen all the stratagem rules, but also by limiting the number of stratagems that you can target a unit with, that may take enough of an edge off of that. Having multiple stratagems won't really matter because, well, and you won't necessarily have more command points. It's just going to be more to mentally juggle. But if it is also if those 1 point detachments are very specific and not terribly powerful. But that does address the issue of why would anyone take this when you have this better option? Well, maybe I want to take that because I want to combine it with something else and have a more varied fighting force, as opposed to this thing that is good, but now it's the only option I have.
Or by taking it, you get access to a different faction or force disposition, so it gives you extra missions or different missions that you want to play. So
Like, yeah, what if you have a really powerful detachment, but it's got a force disposition that just does not fit the rest of your army? This does give them more design space, more levers to adjust, to determine. So like that, you know, we've had the question of, well, how do you balance this unit is really good in this detachment, not as good in this detachment. Do you point cost them differently? You know, it's like, how do you do that? Well, now it's just like that detachment gives you worse missions and it cuts down your options, whereas you can build a better, maybe you build a better force out of this like combination of 2 detachments that aren't as powerful but give you the kinds of missions that you want to have. That's more interesting design space, and I like that.
Yeah,
I'm wanting to stay positive on this, honestly. I guarded optimism, I'll say that. Don't have enough to be like, hey, this all sounds awesome, but there's bits and pieces here that I like and I want to see more details on them.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you, Rob. Guarded optimism. I'm excited about it. I want to see more, and I think my guardedness is, how much is this going to cost?
My concern is, will they have the enough copies of the decks and the train footprints and everything? Train footprints not as big an issue because they've released the stats on those, but they need to have a free, if nothing else, they need to release like a PDF that is, here's all the mission combos.
Yes.
Because they are real bad at getting all the decks out there. They've always been bad.
Well, and then the decks are going to need errata after the first week because of misprints.
Right. And then I'm assuming they're also still going to change up decks every year as they revise missions and switch things out to keep things fresh.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. Again, it gives them more things to adjust, which is always good. It's having more options to balance things that are not just points is better. I'm generally liking what I'm seeing of 11th so far. I would love to see more of it rather than this frustratingly slow drip feed. But as you said, the frustratingly slow drip feed is what's helping people acclimate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not just acclimate, talk about. Do you remember in the past where we got zero information till something dropped?
Yes, that was also bad.
So this is at least building up the hype.
Yes, yeah, definitely, and we're doing our part by discussing it. So, yay, we're shills.
Woohoo! But
do we get paid? Not really. No.
We get some product ahead of time.
Okay, so we get product to review. Yes, such as what we're going to be talking about in part 2.
Yeah, I also find like a little bit of information at a time, like, yeah, a little easier to digest. Like, kind of make it understandable easier than just having all the rules all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. I think about it the way that when The Expanse moved to Amazon, the TV series, there was a whole ecosystem when it was on Sci-Fi of like an episode would come out and then there was like discussions and YouTube videos and people like breaking down the episodes. And then season 4 dropped on Amazon and they dropped the entire season in one day. And there was like, for 2 days, there was a flurry of like, here's the season breakdown. And then nobody talked about that season again until the next season came out. And like, when Amazon released the next season, they released it weekly. And I think they realized that, oh, wait, yeah, dropping everything at once builds a lot of hype for a very, very short period of time. If you want something to be sustained, you need to spread it out.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And this is the right way to get this information out. And I understand they're also having to intersperse it with information about Age of Sigmar and
Age of Sigmar doesn't exist. Other games don't exist. This is the only thing GW should be doing. Yeah.
And also they've been dropping the rules for the various units that are coming along with Return of Yarrick. Like we have the rules for Yarrick, who is, oh my god, and for like Commissar Graves and the new vehicles and Wazdaka Gutsmech, and like we're getting all those. And I'm not going to talk about those in the next part because we have enough to discuss even without digging into the new rules. But you know, they've had a lot. You know, they can't just like data dump on us and cover all the other stuff that they're doing as well. But yeah, I'm excited to see what the next month and a half, because I'm assuming a June release, or like early June. But that's what we've got so far on 11th edition. In a bit, we're going to talk about the Return of Yarrick and the Armored Gauntlet rules. But first, we need to take a break for our sponsors. But if you don't like sitting through ads and want to find other ways to support the show, we've got 3 good ways to support the show. First off is our Patreon. We are at patreon.com/preferred enemies. And that is basically an online tip jar. It's $1 a month. You can give more if you want, but we don't have anything really locked behind that as far as content, as far as like episodes. But it does gain you access to the Preferred Frenemies Discord. It gains you access to any materials we've made, such as our 10th edition update of the old 8th edition Urban Conquest rules, which I'm going to have to update to 11th edition now. And also access to an ad-free feed of the podcast. So if you don't like listening to the ads at the beginning, middle, and end of the podcast, although I don't know who sticks around for the ads at the end of a podcast usually, but hey, if you do, thank you for the extra support. But if you don't like that, you can join the Patreon. Again, patreon.com/preferred enemies, $1 a month. And if enough people put in $1, it really does add up and help out and contribute to being able to do, keep our web hosting and our recording service going, and helping us pay for designing new merch, and hopefully eventually helping us defray travel costs and go to more events. Like, I would like to go to Adepticon some year. I would like to return to Las Vegas Open. I would like to go to the Grand Narrative with you guys. So I would love to see more of that. So if you want to help support the show, that's a great way to do it. Second is we have merch. If you go to preferredenemies.com/merch, you can buy hats, stickers, t-shirts, mugs with the Preferred Enemies logo. We've got our Anxiety Commissar shirt and mug. We just rolled out our Shenanigans 40,000 shirt, which I was inspired by our April Fool's joke to put that one together. So if you want to wear a shirt announcing the general silliness and wild things you can do in 40K, I recommend our Shenanigans 40,000 shirt. I have one myself. It is quite nice. So again, that is preferredenemies.com/merch. And third is our YouTube channel. We are at youtube.com/@preferredenemies. You can like us, subscribe, comment on videos. I need to get the episode previous up. I've been falling a little bit behind, but we'll be getting those back on speed as we get closer and closer to 11th edition. But yeah, just do all the normal YouTube algorithm stuff to help us get in front of more people and get more visible. Also, while these aren't technically ways to help support the show, we are also available on Blue Sky. That is at bsky.app/profile/preferredenemies.com. We've got links on the website to our Blue Sky account there. So we'd love to have more people following us on Blue Sky as well. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we'll be digging into the new release, The Return of Yarrick, and the Armored Gauntlet rules. See you in a bit. And we're back, and that means it's time to dig into The Return of Yarrick. Again, a narrative slipcase product, again, provided by Games Workshop. Thank you very much for providing us a copy to review. All the detachments and art unit rules and things will be provided separately online. We do not have a copy of the detachment rules, but we do have a copy of the narrative book and the Armored Gauntlet rules. So let's get into the backstory first. Obviously, this is a return to the planet of Armageddon, which is probably one of the longest continuing war zones in 40K right now. Honestly, going back to the Horus Heresy, because this used to be the planet of Olenor. So it's just a thing. People fight here. It's actually referred to as a war world more than once. And while we were last year talking about Crusade Armageddon, where Angron and the World Eaters and Cornate Demons attacked and the Grey Knights drove them off, this is happening in the aftermath of that. Orcs had been on the planet for a long while, ever since the previous wars of Armageddon, and they had seemingly been a bit discombobulated by the entire Cornate invasion. So that's the situation where we begin our story. But we actually begin our story before that, where Yarrick met Ghazghkull in battle, and Ghazghkull won. And everyone was sure that Yarrick was dead.
Yeah, he's dead.
Yep.
Except that he wasn't fully dead. He apparently was
lies.
Just mostly dead.
Just mostly dead. Yeah, you could do more than run through his pockets for loose change, right? But he was rescued by the Space Wolves, and he doesn't look great. He's basically held together by a like an armature that's like attached to his skin. His face looks kind of waxy and pale. It's mentioned a few times in here that he looks a little corpse-like, but he's got his vitality. He just doesn't look great. And apparently the Space Wolves brought him back because, according to what the Wolf Priests had determined, he was important to the fate of Armageddon, so they couldn't let him die. He had something else to do.
Okay, so we've got,
and so he needed to return to Armageddon.
Back. We've got the Changeling impersonating people to come back, and now Space Wolves are bringing people back. Okay, yeah. Interesting.
Yep.
One of those seems a lot different from the other two.
Yes, a little bit, yeah. So he is currently on a Space Wolf battle cruiser making his way to Armageddon. Now, around the same time, after that initial Cornate invasion was over, I mentioned the orcs were kind of scattered and uncoordinated. And so there was some chatter among the Imperium forces and the Imperium leadership that if we just make a strong push, we can drive the orcs off of Armageddon once and for all. And the people there who actually had military experience and who had been there for years were like, this is probably not a good idea. This never tends to go well. And in fact, the supreme commander of the Imperium forces, General Tybalt Locke, was the most vocal, saying, we should not do this. This is a bad idea. And at that moment, Commissar Thenia Graves, her who has the new vehicle that lets her drive closer so she can hit it with her sword, bolts into the room and says, you're all a bunch of cowards. We've given the Xenos far too little attention. We've let them be on the planet longer than we really should. If we actually serve the Imperium and the Emperor, we should go out and fight them. And anyone who says otherwise, I'm going to kill. So everyone's like, okay, I guess we're putting together a battle plan. And it kind of goes all right at first. Some other people there include Intransia Frey, the Dogmata Superior on her throne, the Inquisitor Inigo Croyle, which that is the weirdest spelling of Inigo, Ynigoh. But Inigo Croyle with the very weird horse. Please put the feedback back on. I don't want to see its face. They come up with a plan. They're like, okay, well, a lot of the orcs are set up in a couple of different places. There's some that are in Hive Tempestora, and then there's a bunch in the Equatorial Jungle. And it's like, well, attacking a hive where there's loose orcs running around, bad idea. We'll burn the forests down. So Croyle takes what are called the Purgation Corps to go burn the forests down. And first, this seems to go really well. Everything is proceeding as hoped. The orcs are getting pushed back. Their numbers are getting thinned down. Hey, maybe we can actually win. And then all of a sudden, an orc fleet appears in orbit. It didn't translate into the system and travel to the planet. It just boom, appears in orbit. Thousands and thousands of ships. Basically, rifts in reality open up and ships just pour through. And it turns out, you find out later in the book, that this is one of Ghazghkull's plans, and it is basically a mega teleshaka. It is a teleporter that was designed. What if we took a shock attack gun and instead of firing snotlings, it fired spaceships?
I mean, that's standard orc logic to me.
That is standard orc logic, and it works. It just immediately this fleet,
because it's orcs deciding.
Yes, they believe it does.
Of course, it works.
Yep. So yeah, this entire fleet appears in orbit and just starts disgorging orcs onto planet side in their millions. And suddenly, this fight does not look winnable. And, you know, that like General Locke, his forces are stretched thin because they've just been running a thin cordon to push these scattered bands of orcs back. Now you've got tons of them landing on the plains in millions. And so he's like, okay, we got to rally as many troops as we can and get back to Hive Volcanus. And around the same time, the Space Wolves strike cruiser that Yarrick is on is having to fight through this fleet. They're like, well, maybe we should leave because there's too many here. We're a single strike cruiser. We need to wait and call for reinforcements. And Yarrick's like, no, I need to get to Hive Volcanus. I have a feeling I need to be there. So they're like, okay, fine. You can have like one transport ship. Around the same time, Ghazghkull has ordered Wazdaka Gutsmech and his Speedwa, you need to encircle Hive Volcanus. And so you need to punch through Locke's lines, and we get a description of the battle there. You know, orc cruisers are bombarding the lines, and there's, you know, bikes and trucks and buggies, and it's not going well at first. Like, the Imperium's holding off as best they can, but they realize they are now cut off from their lines. They cannot get through. And it is around this time, even though they're giving their all and trying to break through, they can't. That's when the Space Wolf transport lands and Yarrick walks out, and they're like, oh my God, he's a ghost. And then they realize he's actually there and alive. And the orcs see him and they freak out. Because they're like, wait a minute, Gaz killed him. Bol Baelai's supposed to be dead. What's he doing here? And they start turning.
Oh, you done messed up now.
Yeah, and Wasdak is pissed because, wait a minute, all me boys are leaving. And it opens up enough of a gap that the Imperium forces are able to make it back to High Volcanus. At the same time, Wasdak is trying to get things back together, and every time he's trying to get momentum back, now the Imperium, they're rallied now. So he's not able to break through, and he's just getting frustrated. But Yarrick is there with a mission. He's not just there to rally the troops and lead. In fact, he's like, I have something much more important to do. And Space Wolves have landed elsewhere on Armageddon. They're fighting, and it sounds like things are going, like they're doing okay. They're mostly trying to keep supply lines open, but they haven't been able to contact them. And he's like, yeah, look, I look terrible. I know that. But he's got his like full vigor and intensity and intelligence. And it's like, look, we do not have enough forces here to withstand the size of this orc war. If we're going to save this planet and ourselves, we have to call for help. And so I have this thing. And he opens up an old reliquary, and out of the box he pulls a gold-plated servo skull. It's like, this thing is called the Ferris Horrifica. It's made from the skull of a master astropath. And if I bring this to the astropathic choir, it'll send out a massive warp beacon cry for help, and surely someone in the Imperium will hear us and come to our rescue. It's our only chance. And so everyone's like, yeah, this is a good idea, and you're Yarrick. We're definitely going to go with whatever you say. And so, all right, he walks off with a unit of Tempestus Scions to go to the astropathic choir there in High Volcanus, because Armageddon is actually a unique planet in that they have 4 separate astropathic choirs. Most planets do not have this many, but there's enough hive cities here. It's like, yeah, we've got 4 because we never know when one of them might be cut off. Meanwhile, because they weren't able to push the orcs off the planet, Commissar Graves is super pissed. And she completely blames General Locke and shoots him in the head.
As you do.
Because she's like, well, you hesitated. We could have won. You hesitated. Shoots him in the head and puts the Death Corps Krieg Marshal in charge. So that would explain why we're not seeing any Steel Legion right now, and why they said, oh, just use Death Corps Krieg.
Mm-hmm. That's why. That's why. Yeah.
That's totally why. Yarrick goes into the High Volcanus astropathic choir, and they open up the door, and it's like, at first, like, there's a delay. Nobody inside the chamber is answering, so they get the servitor to, they enter the right codes to get the servitor to open the door, and they come in, it's like, all the astropaths have been killed and, like, ripped from their creches, and no escape is, like, painted on the wall in blood, in Orcish, but Yarrick knows how to read it Orcish, and it says, it's just no escape.
That's like not a good sign, right?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, orc infiltrators had snuck in and killed the choir. So like, no, you don't get to ask for help. So, the Imperium forces, they have to get this call for help. So there's only one thing to do. We need to send out an armored column to make it to one of the other 3 hives. Hey, Infernus and Hell's Reach are too far away. And obviously Volcanus is out. So the nearest one that we can get to is Deathmire, which living in a town called Deathmire, that's really got to do a lot for your psychological health.
It's probably fine.
But that path is going to cut through a massive bit of orc taken territory. And they also know Wasdaka's Speedwa is still out there. So they've got to figure out how to deal with that. Dogmatic Superior Frey says, well, what you need is a distraction. Yarrick is requisitioning what he needs. So Frey and Commissar Graves and Marshal Gorman of the Death Corps Krieg, they muster a second force, and they're like, well, all the fast stuff we're going to give to Yarrick because he needs to get there as quickly as possible. We'll take all the really heavy stuff, and we'll just lead a massive column to bust into the orc lines and draw all their attention. And we get this set of just massive battles the distraction battle is intense, but eventually even Commissar Graves is like, we need to retreat. Like we've done what we can to buy time, but if we all die here, we don't necessarily help anything. We need to be able to defend Volcanus. So they do retreat to Volcanus originally, but only like an eighth of the force that went out as the distraction force makes it back. It's bad.
That sounds like quitter talk.
When even the Commissar is like, yeah, we should go.
Yeah, that's not great.
It's not great. And yeah, Wazdaka is at the forefront of that battle. Meanwhile, Yarrick is back in the Fortress of Arrogance, his special Baneblade, and he's leading a massive column out. And, of course, because they're the new hotness and the new kits, a lot of mention of hippogriffs and centaurs. There's Leman Russ battle tanks, chimeras, Taroxes, Rogaldorns, wyverns. Basically, if it's in the codex, they pretty much list it here. There are Imperial Knights. There's Valkyries and Vultures going along. And even a pair of Titans, of Warhound Titans, are going with them. And so they're making this mad dash across the plains to get to Hive Deathmire. It is a long series of running battles. And I don't want to sit here and just read the book to you. And the battle descriptions are actually really good, so I do recommend reading this. There's one part where they hit an ash storm, like a radioactive ash storm. They have to drive through to the point where it's collapsing orc power fields and void shields on the knights. It's like it's degrading the wiring outside. It is severe. There's a bunch of like orc fortifications they have to bust through. Stompers show up, and so the knights and the titans are busy having to fight those off and fighting a last stand. Just again to draw attention away, so Yarrick and the Fortress of Arrogance and the rest of his column can make it through. They get to Hive Deathmire, and Inquisitor Croyle is waiting there. He got there a few days ago with what was left of the Purgation Corps, and he had been briefed on the mission, and so he's there. He opens up a tunnel to let the column in and get into Deathmire. And right before it can hit the tunnel, an orbital beam comes from one of the orc cruisers in space and just punches a hole into the Fortress of Arrogance and sets it on fire.
Aww. So no new Baneblade model.
No new Baneblade model. And so everyone's like, oh crap, did we just lose Yarrick? And then one of the chimeras pulls up into the tunnel and Yarrick gets out. It's like, I was never in that. That was a distraction.
I was here the whole time.
He's Sam Reich now. And I'm Commissar Yarrick. I've been here the whole time. And so they have to fight through Deathmire, because Deathmire's been under attack this whole time as well. But he's finally able to make it to the command spire, gets into the Astropathic Sanctum, activates the Ferris Horrificus. The signal goes out, and it is a massive warp blast. It says every astropath and weird boy in the system cries out in shock, and many of them weep tears of blood and flame.
Well, that's not good.
It is a massively powerful call out into the warp. And yet things are still going very badly. There's more ships landing. The Purgation Corps, what's left of them, are fighting for their lives in the jungles. Various hives are surrounded. And yeah, basically the subsector command has to give a proclamation that they never wanted to give. Armageddon has fallen. There's not enough troops on Armageddon to hold it, and there are way more orcs than they can deal with. And then we get like all the various character profiles and some information on Gaz and this Wa and the Mega Teleshaka, the various boss boys involved, a history of war on Armageddon, and then finally, present day, Armageddon's fallen. We get word that Hive and Furnace is completely besieged. Deathmire is going to be surrounded soon, and some of the districts are already overrun. Tempestora is controlled by the enemy. Hive Hades and Hive Theratis are gone. They have been destroyed. Hive Acheron falls. Volcanus is surrounded. things are bad. And Yarrick had hoped, like, making the announcement that I'm here in Deathmire. Come get me. Send all your forces to get me, Ghazghkull. I want a rematch. Ghazghkull didn't take the bait. Ghazghkull's gotten too smart for that. And even
That's
Yarrick,
good.
and even Yarrick is just like, I got nothing. But then all of a sudden, a new signal comes in, and there's like static, and then a single word comes out of the static, very clearly spoken in the voice of a Space Marine, and it's just Imperator. And that's where the story ends. And I gotta say, this is one of the better stories from these narratives. Like, this was a good read. Like, it's an intense story. There are very clear stakes. The battles feel like they're actually leading to something. This mad dash to get to Hive Deathmire. Again, it feels like there's something going on. And this is not a battle that is fought to a tie. The orcs are definitely winning at the end. There is a hope at the very end.
So, Rob, because he was with the Space Wolves, do you think maybe that psychic blast that went out into everywhere is going to call Lehman Russ out and he'll come and join and help the Space Wolves fight orcs?
Boy, wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be awesome. I'd really like that.
That would be awesome.
No, I don't think we can get him back. Just no. Doesn't sound like a thing they would do.
I would not be surprised. We've talked about Primarch comes back. I still think Vulcan's the most likely, and the Salamanders have history on Armageddon as well. So if he showed up, it wouldn't be out of nowhere.
Yeah, but Russ and Ghazghkull's standoff would be really cool.
But again, the Space Wolves also have history on Armageddon. So both of those could be a thing. And being that strong a call, it's not impossible. So,
and didn't he say when Armageddon happened, he would return or something like that?
It was when the wolf time.
Okay. Armageddon.
But this could qualify. I mean, the Imperium has held Armageddon since the Great Crusade. So this could qualify as the wolf time. So, and that would explain why the Space Wolves were so interested and then kind of did radio silence afterwards. So who knows? That's not, I hadn't thought of that angle, but that is a possibility. But that very cool story is not the only thing in this box set. The other thing is the Armored Gauntlet rules. Now, we've had the board game strategic play version of 40K with 500 worlds. We've had 1,000-point pirate games with Maelstrom and Crucible of Champions, which, again, I will never cease to say one of the most awesome things they've ever had in 10th edition. We've had Apocalypse guidelines. I don't really think they're rules so much as guidelines per se. And now we have Armored Gauntlet, which is an expansion of vehicle rules for representing big multi-vehicle battles in 40K in a way that the core rules don't support. And there's a lot of throwback here to older rules from 40K. We joked when we released the April Fool's joke that, hey, they're bringing back, they're changing the vehicle rules. This feels like, I'm just going to say up front, this feels like a throwback to the old days of vehicle rules.
Yeah.
Now, I will say there's a lot here. This is not just like a simple, slot on this add-on. There's a lot of changes to the rules here. And yeah, so I'm just going to run through this. This is based on the idea of spearhead models. Because, this is the idea of an armored spearhead, like the vehicles leading the front in a battle. Mm-hmm. And so many of the rules here key off of the spearhead keyword. And a model has spearhead if all of the following apply. It is a monster or vehicle. It has 10 or more wounds. It is not aircraft and does not have the hover ability. It is not a fortification, and it has a move characteristic that is not dash. Now, on top of that, a number of factions will apply the spearhead keyword to other models that may not fit this description, usually vehicles that have fewer wounds. If you're using the Armored Gauntlet rules for your mission, this is where things get interesting. Spearhead models are not removed at 0 wounds. Not automatically, anyway. If a vehicle takes damage that would reduce to 0, and they have separate callouts for normal damage and mortal wounds. So, like, if a vehicle takes normal damage, any excess damage that would take it beyond 0 is ignored. It's lost. Any additional attacks that were already targeted to the vehicle just are lost. They just have no effect. You don't even bother rolling them. If it's mortal wounds, once the mortal wounds reduce to 0, any other mortal wounds just go away. They are lost. Once the vehicle is down to 0, your opponent rolls a d6. And you add 1 to the d6 for each damage token the model has. Now, what is a damage token? A damage token is something that is applied by some of the vehicle damage effects that we're going to hear. The more damage tokens a vehicle has gained, it is more likely to have a worse damage result, as it makes the die roll for the damage table roll higher. It also adds to deadly demise rolls. So the more tokens you have, so if you have 1 damage token, you deadly demise on a 5 or a 6. If you have 2 of them, you deadly demise on a 4 through 6, and so on. So it's just the more likely you are to explode when you die.
Okay.
Other than that, damage tokens don't do anything. Basically, once the damage table is rolled, you apply whatever the effect is, and unless the model is stated as being destroyed, it stays on the table at 1 wound remaining, which does mean that a vehicle could take multiple damage rolls in a single turn from multiple sets of attacks, each one taking it down to 0 wounds. Where this gets a bit more complex than I like is how many damage tables there are. Because there is a basic vehicle damage table. And I'll give you an example of what that table looks like. This is going to apply to all vehicles that are not applied to by another table. If you roll a 1, and remember, this is d6 plus the number of damage tokens. And there are 3 kinds of effects you could have. You could have adding damage tokens, an instant effect, which is whatever this is, you immediately resolve it, or damage statuses, which accrue to the vehicle, but duplicates are never cumulative. So if something gets like -1 to something, if you roll that same result, you won't get another -1. But a lot of them apply damage statuses and damage tokens. So even if you roll a duplicate, you're still adding damage tokens to the vehicle. So for example, basic vehicle table. If you roll a 1, there's an instant effect. Crew is shaken. The unit must take a battle shock test. And no damage tokens applied. Roll a 2. Crew stunned. Lower the vehicle's leadership by 1, and they take a damage token. Roll a 3. Weapon targeters damaged. The vehicle can only target the closest eligible target for the rest of the game. And add a damage token. Roll a 4. Engine damaged. -3 inches of movement, and gain a damage token. Roll a 5. Hull breached, -1 toughness for the rest of the game as a damage status, and gain 2 damage tokens. And then on 6 or higher, the vehicle is just destroyed. There are also tables for the basic transport table and the basic monster table. So like the transport table is pretty much the same until you get to 4 and 5. 4 is each unit embarked within the model suffers D3 mortal wounds. Embarked models destroyed as a result do not trigger rules that... So, like, if you have something inside that deadly demises, it can't go off inside the vehicle.
Aww.
And if you had firing deck, you lose that for the rest of the game. And if you roll a 5, crew compartment destroyed, all units currently embarked must immediately emergency disembark and can never be embarked back in that tank or that vehicle again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then the monster table is, first one is stunned, battle shock test. Second one, hit injury, -1 leadership. Number 3, deep wounds, subtract 2 from their strength of all their melee weapons for the rest of the game. 4 is lacerated sinews, subtract 1 from advance and charge rolls for the rest of the game. 5 is grievous injury, -1 toughness, just like on the vehicles. And then 6 up is destroyed. So you got these 3 basic charts, but every faction has their own charts too. And that's where I think this gets a little bit more complex than it needed to be. We'll get into that as we go. And they do also specify if you have detachments where you can have units from 2 different armies. The example they give is Brood Brothers, which Brood Brothers is just good detachment to roll with. Even though you're playing Gene Stealer cults, your Astra Militarum vehicles would use the Astra Militarum tables. There's also spearhead upgrades, and this system is basically in the missions found in the book. There's a step called Declare Spearheads. You can select a number of spearhead models and grant them spearhead upgrades, which are faction specific. The number of upgrades you can use depends on the total number of spearhead requisition points, so another thing we have to track. And that is based on the total points value of all the spearhead units in your army. So if you have 499 or less, you get no spearhead upgrades if you just have a few vehicles, all the way up to if you have 1,500 plus points of spearhead units, you get 6 points. Now, I do think there's an issue here with the table, though, and the way it's written. Like, it's basically every 500 points, up to 500 is 0, 500 to up to 1,000 is 2, 1,000 up to 1,500 is 4, 1,500 and plus is 6. But the column is not how many spearhead requisition points you get. It's how maximum number of spearhead upgrades, and that reads differently. So I think that's just an issue with the table. Just so clarification, if you look at that, it's supposed to be SRPs, not number of upgrades max. Most of the upgrades cost 1 to 3 points, so some of the bigger ones you cannot even take unless you have over 1,000 points of vehicles, of applicable vehicles in your army. This one, interesting. I feel like it's an unnecessary bit of complication, and I think with some of the unit upgrade enhancements we're going to have in 11th, this one is one I think you'll probably be able to safely skip. Like, some of the upgrades are nice, but it's just extra complex. For every faction, there's a separate set of, additional spearhead units. Like, these are units that don't fall under the rules, but should still be treated as spearhead units. And then extra damage tables for particular types of vehicles. So, for example, Astra Militarum adds Hippogriff AFVs, Scout Sentinels, and Armored Sentinels to the list of spearhead units, which matters because all of those vehicles have less than 10 wounds. Like the new Hippogriff AFV, I think, is 7 wounds. It's a really light vehicle. And then the damage tables for Astra Militarum are, they have a tank officer damage table. So if you have a Rogel Dorn or Lehman Russ tank commander, you would use this table. And that matters because number 2 on the list is commander injured. If you had the Ace Commander Spearhead upgrade, which is an upgrade you can buy for 2 points, which lets you do better damage rolls against other units, you lose that on a 1 to 3, and you can never issue more than 1 order per battle round. Otherwise, it's very similar to the other vehicle tables. And they also have a super heavy damage table just for like Baneblades and such. Adeptus Astartes adds dreadnoughts and land speeders to their spearhead list, and they have a heavy vehicle and a dreadnought damage table vehicle. The heavy vehicle table is for wounds of 16 or more. So land raiders get their own damage table, and then dreadnoughts get a damage table. And then all the first founding chapters, Blood Angels, Dark Angels, and Space Wolves get their own list of upgrades. And Black Templars also get a list of upgrades. So, like, remember the old Lucifer pattern engines for Blood Angels that made all their vehicles, fleet back in the day? Basically does the same thing. All their non-walkers for, like, you can apply it to a non-walker for 1 SRP and give it 3 extra inches of movement.
Nice.
Kind of nifty. Grey Knights get dreadnought tables, and they have a heavy vehicle damage table, so their land raiders get a table, and combat walkers, so Dread Knights also get to fall under the damage table and get a separate damage table. Adeptus Sororitas add mortifiers and penitent engines to the table. The walkers get their own damage table, and the ecclesiarchal battle tank damage table. So basically all of their tougher vehicles, so like the Castigator, the Exorcist, etc., have a table with the one of the things being faith tested. Worsen this unit's leadership characteristic by 1 while the unit is battle shocked. It cannot perform acts of faith or use the Blessed Engine Spearhead upgrade. Ow, you can't use miracle dice because you lost your faith. Ow.
How does a vehicle lose its faith? Anyway. That's a dumb question to ask in this universe. Sorry.
This one was interesting. Adeptus Custodes. The units they add, Dreadnought. Okay, fine. Yeah, the Contemptor Dreads. Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Palace Gravitac units. They don't have any of those in the Codex. I think they only have them in the Forge World rules. Which tells me, since they have made a very pointed effort to say the rules in these various like narrative documents will continue into 11th edition, I'm thinking we get some plastic Palace Gravitac tanks.
Interesting.
Which is not the same as like the Cladius. The Cladius would already fall under the normal Spearhead. So the Palace is like a lighter grav vehicle. So yeah, that's interesting. Mechanicus adds the Chicken Walker units, the Ballistari and the Sidonian Walkers, to their damage tables. Imperial Knights get an Armager damage table and a Titanic Knight damage table. Just like Chaos Knights get a War Dog and a Titanic Chaos Knight damage table, which I think are mostly the same. No, actually, they are slightly different. Because like the Titanic Knight on 5, they have like Plasma Reactor Critical. At the end of each turn, roll a d6. On a 1 to 3, this unit gains a damage token. So it might just keep getting more and more damage no matter what. Whereas the Chaos Knights get Plasma Core Breached, subtract 1 from its toughness, and if they have a particular upgrade, it gains an additional damage token. And the thing on that one is the upgrade, the Malevolus class reactor. While it has 1 or more damage tokens, it gains stealth. While it has 2 or more damage tokens at the end of every turn, roll a d6 for every other unit within 6 inches of it. On a 4-up, that unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. So basically the reactor is just venting plasma out around the knight. There's some neat stuff in here. It's just, I'll get to it when I get to the end, but let's see. Heretic Astartes add Hellbrute, Venom Crawler, and Lord Discordance to their Spearhead list. And they do also specify that World Eaters, Thousand Sons, Death Guard, and Emperor's Children use the same damage tables if they apply.
Sure.
And they're kind of handled the way Space Marines are. They have their own sets of upgrades, but otherwise they're using this damage table. Chaos Demons actually have a damage table because obviously Demon Princes would fall under the monster list, and the Greater Demons would fall under the monster list. But they also add Skull Cannons, Burning Chariots, and Torment Bringer units. I'm not familiar with the Torment Bringer keyword.
Yeah, I don't know offhand what those would be.
Oh, that's the Slanesh Chariots. Torment Bringer's the Slanesh Chariot.
Gosh, I even forgot that because they're just so bad and nobody uses them.
Yeah. That's like the new name for so that's why I was like, I don't know that one. Oh, that's because that's not what they used to be called.
I figured it was something Slanesh, but I wasn't sure.
Orcs add the Death Killer War Trike, Death Dreads, and Speed Freak vehicles, so like all the buggies and such, to their damage tables. And they do have a buggy damage table and a walker damage table. Tau add Piranhas and Broadsides to their damage table, or to their Spearhead list, and they've got a Battlesuit damage table, which would apply to Ghost Keels and Riptides primarily, and Broadsides, because they do have a Broadside table. Or they do add broadsides to the Spearhead, and a gunship table, which pretty much just applies to Sky Rays and Hammerheads. Necrons add the Catacomb Command Barge and the Annihilation Barge, and they have a Monolith damage table, which rolling a 1 on the Monolith just gets Edifice Rocked as your damage result, which is just the coolest damage result.
That was the name of my prog rock band in college.
Edifice Rocked.
Edifice Rocked.
Yeah, I play bass for Edifice Rocked.
Leagues of Votan add both Capricus and Sagittars to their Spearhead units. And Capricus Defenders get their own table, as do Hecaton Land Fortresses.
Yay.
And I can't wait to make a land fortress roll a 4 on the damage chart to give it sponsons wrecked. You cannot make attacks with twin bolt cannons or twin ion beamers with your Hecaton land fortress.
Oh, darn. I've still got the big gun. That's the only one that matters.
Oh, no.
Or broken axle on a 3. The unit cannot make an advance move, and each time the unit moves, it can either move in a straight line or it can pivot, but it can't do both.
I mean, that's still better than rolling a 1 on the movement over terrain in the previous edition.
That is
Right,
true.
yeah.
That is true.
It's not immobilized, so it's still better.
Yep.
Eldari add a whole bunch of spearhead units: Warwalkers, Vipers, Starfangs, Voidweavers, Starweavers, and Inari Venoms. And then they've got a Grav Tank damage table and a Wraith Knight damage table.
They're still in the game.
Wraith Knights are still in the game, and if you roll a 4 on the Wraith Knight damage table, you get Pilot Slain. The unit's leadership characteristic is changed to 8, and the weapon skill and ballistic skill characteristic of its weapons are changed to 4 up. In addition, it gains the following ability. It basically gains the requirement to be near a psyker, or if there's a psyker nearby, it gets +1 to hit. So one of the two twin, like the living twin inside the Wraith Knight dies, but the dead twin is still there piloting the robot.
Right.
Drukari add Venom, Kronos, and Talos units to their spearhead damage, or to their spearhead units, and they have a combat skimmer damage table, which is just for Ravagers and Raiders, and then a Pain Engine damage table, which applies to the Talos and Kronos. And then Gene Stealer Cults add Achilles Ridge Runners, and then they have tables for the Ridge Runners and one for the Goliath Rock Grinder. Tyranids add Nero Tyrants, Old One Eye, and Carnifex units to their spearhead, because I guess the Carnifexes come in just under that 10 wound threshold.
Yeah.
And they have damage tables for Synapse, Spearhead, and Biotank, which Biotank applies only to Exocrines and Tyrannifex units.
Yeah.
And that is all the damage tables. On one hand, I love the fact that a lot of these damage tables are full of character. Like the idea of a sister's tank, the pilot losing faith if the vehicle got rocked a certain way, or the upgrade on the Chaos Knight to vent plasma as a weapon. Like, oh, I'm nearly dead, I'm going to just murder everything around me by venting my reactor. Like, I like stuff like that. The War Dogs have one like, hey, arm is damaged, roll a d6. On a 1 to 3, you can't use your weapon on your right arm. On a 4 to 6, you can't use weapons on your left arm. There's things like that that are really cool. My concern is this adds a ton of extra complexity and looking up tables and flipping back and forth, especially because you have the generic tables at the front of the book, and then you have to, oh, but this vehicle falls under a different table because of its keyword or number of wounds, and I have to apply this table instead. That's going to be a mess in play. I feel like you'll want to, if you're going to do this, photocopy out the pages you need and keep them together. That'll make it go a lot easier. It's a lot.
I kind of feel like this is something that is probably only going to get really used if you're doing something like Thanksgiving events or something like that, where it's like, bring all of your vehicles and just vehicles, and we're going to have a big vehicle fight. So, like, I could see this being super fun to do.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't know how often, it won't come up in normal games.
No, I don't. This is one where it's like, I cannot say that I recommend using this in normal games. I do like the idea of combining this with an apocalypse game, though. Because in an apocalypse game, a vehicle could take like a hit from a massive apocalypse weapon. This could be the alternative if you're doing vehicle heavy apocalypse to doing the units don't get pulled from the table immediately.
Yeah.
Fair.
And saying like, okay, yeah, it stays on the table. It gets hit. It's going to have an effect, but it's still going to get to do stuff because unless you roll a 6 on the damage table, it's not immediately destroyed. That's not necessarily bad. I think, yeah, there's definitely fun ways this can be used. This is certainly a special occasion kind of rule set.
Yeah. To me, I'd probably want to keep it out of Apocalypse because Apocalypse already is going to take forever. Adding more to it would take it forever and a day. But I do like the idea of, like you guys were saying, like a special event of like a Thanksgiving or something where everyone knows it's not apocalypse, but bring your vehicles. We're having a vehicle war type thing.
Yeah.
And it could just be, I don't know, it would also be a day.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is definitely either for a casual, hey, you want to play with some fun vehicle rules, or we've set aside this event. If you are the organizer of this event, find out what factions people are playing and give them copies of these pages for their faction ahead of time. So they have a physical copy. And I would also provide the copies to everyone of the generic, like the base tables too. Because I'm assuming this is, when this goes up for pre-order, as you hear this is probably going to have the same availability as the other narrative books, i.e. none. So you're probably lucky if you have one, maybe two players in your group that has access to this book. And this is a book you're going to be doing active referral to, because unlike the old damage charts, when we were playing like 5th, 6th, 7th edition, we had those tables memorized because there was one table.
Yep.
This, you're talking for a given faction. I think every faction has 2 of their own tables. So you're talking 5 tables that you will have to refer to. 4 most likely, because not everybody's going to have vehicles or most people either have vehicles or monsters. A few factions will have both, but not many. Although if you're playing one of those hybrid detachments, like if you're playing Emperor's Children, Emperor's Children is all going to be one table. But if you're playing like the Final Day detachment for Gene Stealer cults, where you've got Tyranids and Gene Stealer cultists, you definitely would have to have the monster chart around, and you would need both the Tyranid, like one or more of the Tyranid charts, and you might need your Gene Stealer cult charts, maybe not, but you're also going to want to take as many vehicles as possible for this format. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And the thing is, the underlying rules are not terribly complex. It's pretty easy to understand. If you're at 0, you roll on the damage chart, you apply the damage, and then you're back to 1. That's really easy. That's really easy to teach somebody. It's just then you've got a lot of flipping around. And that's the only part I don't like on this. That, and I think the Spearhead upgrades, I think that implementation is a little clumsy. I think the chart is not as neatly spelled out as it needs to be. And I feel like the points are weird in that a lot of the points are odd, but the points given are even, so you'll never really use all of them that well. It could be better. That could be better. But I love the concept of this. And then we get Armored Gauntlet missions. There are 9 separate missions here, and they reprint the upgrade chart in here. Which in the upgrade chart here on the mission, that chart, instead of being maximum number of upgrades allowed, it is actually requisition points. So one of the charts, so the earlier chart is incorrect. This is the correct one on page 70. They said the games are best when players have similar number of spearhead units point wise within 500 points of each other. So again, they want you to be playing tank on tank battles. And there are 2 tables. Table 1 is 6 missions that are designed to be played symmetrically. Table B is 3 missions, which are designed to be asymmetric, where attacker and defender have different goals. Again, these are specific to this. If you're playing 11th edition rules, everybody's asymmetrical. There's heavy metal, which is just basically kill points, like keeping track of kill tallies. Priority targets, which is selecting priority targets, kind of an assassination style mission. Rubble and Ruin, which is an objective mission. Control objectives in your territory. You can demolish objective markers in your opponent's territory for points. Street Fight, which is another objective-based mission. Reconnaissance, and a number of these are actually objective-based. Only the very first one is just kill things, and even it still has objectives. You do score for objectives, but you also score for kill points. But again, these are all going to feel kind of archaic when 11th edition hits. And then at the very end, we get a list of Armored Gauntlet campaigns, which are basically 3 mission tree campaigns where basically based on who wins, somebody will get a bonus, and that changes what the next mission is. And they even do cover what happens. What if we tie? Well, then there's a track for that as well. And for these campaigns, you track kill counts, and once you've had a certain number of kills, you can become an ace and get ace you keep track of, like, if a unit was destroyed, then in between battles, you can repair it, but it might have penalties to it. So, for example, for each spearhead unit that is destroyed during the battle, a controlling player must roll on the following table. If the player's army contains one or more character units that have the ability to fix vehicles, like a Tech Marine or a Warp Smith or something like that, you can re-roll the result on the table. On a 1, you roll on the damage table for that vehicle. On a 2 to 3, you just start with a damage token, and on a 4 or better, the vehicle is fine. So you can have some lingering effects for losing vehicles in between missions. That's kind of cool. But just a very simple campaign system. The entire campaign system is 4 pages, but I think that would be enough to make a fun, like that could be a fun Thanksgiving event too. It's like, hey, this week we're going to play mission 1. Then next week we'll see who wins. We'll play mission 2. Everybody will get a chance to fix up their vehicles, apply ace benefits, and then we'll go from there, play 3, and then we'll determine who wins. It's very, very simple, easy to lay over these rules. All in all, I'm going to this sounds like the worst criticism of any of these is this is the one I'm least likely to play. That does not mean I think it's bad.
I personally think I'm still probably more likely to play this than 500 Worlds, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the odd spot of I am playing in 500 Worlds right now, so I technically have to say I am more likely to play 500 Worlds than this. Also, this one is kind of like Apocalypse, and I know this is an issue you've brought up in the past, Dennis. Because this is so vehicle heavy, a lot of people may not be able to play this really to its full effect yet.
Right, and I think for me, if I want to play like this or Apocalypse, I lean into Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Yeah, because I think Apocalypse is the one that's, even though it is for big battles and lots of stuff going on, it actually is a rule set that streamlines things and makes things easier to apply. Whereas this is extra complications. But if you're really into vehicle battles, it does add a nice thing to it. But yeah, I think this is the one that I think is going to be the hardest to roll out for a lot of players. So, yeah, I think I'm with you. I'd be more likely to want to play an Apocalypse than Armored Gauntlet. I like Armored Gauntlet. I like some of the ideas in Armored Gauntlet. I just feel like it's probably got the most in-game heavy lifting compared to, like, 500 Worlds definitely has the most out-of-game heavy lifting. Like, that one is so much bookkeeping and so much tracking. Like, I'm basically game mastering our 500 World campaign because you have to have somebody doing that. There's so many pieces. Whereas this is very simple to get people organized. It's like, hey, bring all the tanks you can. It'll be fun. But it's in-game, it's going to drag things down. Just especially if you're running a whole bunch of vehicles and tracking everybody has so many damage tokens and checking what column, which chart am I rolling on for this particular vehicle? Did I roll the right chart? That's going to bog the game down a lot. But I will say the flip side of that is if you're running a bunch of tanks tend to be expensive, so you won't have nearly as many units on the table. So I'm going to guess that as of now, we have all 4 now of the narrative supplements for the end of 10th edition. And I don't think I'm being presumptuous in saying Maelstrom is our favorite.
Yeah.
No, Maelstrom's my favorite.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah. Yeah. Maelstrom is the one that I think everybody can get into. It encourages smaller games, so it's easier to get more people started on it. Crucible Champions is a ton of fun. The mission structure is reminiscent enough of what's going on with 11th that I think it'll be very easy for people to move from one to the other. It's the most successful and probably has the least overhead, even with the Crucible Champion system. Like, once you've got the character built, it's really easy to do. And a complaint I had earlier on when it came out, if you use New Recruit for army management and list building, New Recruit now has support for Crucible Champions in it. So you can build your characters there. So, like, the data files have been updated for that. So I'm having a lot of fun just, like, playing around with Crucible Champions in our current campaign. And it's also, Crucible Champions is very easy to apply to any narrative game. Like, it's not specific to Maelstrom. And I think that is also what makes it very easy to recommend. After that, I'd say Apocalypse, just because I think Apocalypse had a lot of neat ideas, and I also really liked the guidelines on organizing events. I think we need more of that for people we need more people organizing events. So anything we can do to help people with that process is good.
Yeah, Apocalypse gets second for me of the four, just because it seems easiest to get into other than Maelstrom, because you don't have to have a lot for Maelstrom. Apocalypse you do, but the rules are pretty much going to be 10th/11th.
As far as number 3, I think this is where we might end up having a split. I don't know. As much as I have been saying I don't like the extra complexity, but yeah, and like I feel like this is a little bit too much, and I'm least likely to play this, I think Armored Gauntlet is third for me, because I think it's the one that will be, of the remaining two, the most fun to play.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that.
I will also agree with that.
Yeah. And then, even though I am actively playing in a 500 Worlds campaign, I'd say 500 Worlds is the one that is, I think that I found the narrative to be rather dull and uninspiring. Like, it was okay. It's just like in the end, it didn't feel like anything really happened at the end. It's like, well, the campaign is still ongoing. Whereas like this, like Armageddon, like Maelstrom, I thought it was more just setting the scene, but it really did give you a good sense of the character of the people involved. This one definitely, like Armored Gauntlet had the best story. Like Return of Yarrick had the best story. Apocalypse was I don't know. Apocalypse and 500 Worlds, I think, are tied for my nothing really happened. But at least in Reign of Iron, you got the sense that something was happening. There's a larger push. Just what we saw just kind of stalled out. 500 Worlds, literally at the end, nobody wins. But yeah, 500 Worlds is the one that I would be most hard pressed to recommend people trying. It is a lot of bookkeeping you need, and we're in our second phase. We're going to do 3 phases. By about that point, 11th edition will be out, and I'm wondering if we're going to continue we were going to do 6 phases originally. I don't want to say we're going to stop at 3, especially if I have players listening. I'm not saying we're stopping at 3, but we had already agreed to we'll do 3 phases and then kind of review and see if we want to keep going. And I feel like compared to past narrative campaigns I've run, we're playing a lot less because of just how everything is arranged. Even though we've got the same number of players, not every action leads to a battle. So there's a lot of battles that just aren't happening that we would normally have. And after one phase, we were all still tied. There was no real movement. So I'm curious to see if that continues to be the case or not.
So it accurately reflects the story is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Well, I guess I'll toss in with our groups. We're doing the narrative Armageddon campaign. And yeah, we finished our first phase because we're only doing 2 battles each phase. And yeah, we had some ties there too, but phases 1 and 4 in that book, winning matters. Phases 2 and 3, to get your strategic points, you have to do non-victory stuff. Since we lost, we have to cover 3 of the 4 board edges with a unit at the end of the game. And I'm thinking, I have 4 units. How am I going to do this? But so each faction has its own thing, but you're just like yours. We're probably going to finish up this second phase. 11th will drop. And then we'll probably be in the thing of, do we finish this out? I think we probably will, but do we use 10th edition rules? Do we use 11th edition rules? Do we take a month off to learn 11th edition rules? So it does put long form things in question when you're in the middle of it when edition drops.
Yeah, it really does. And at least with 500 Worlds, when 11th drops, we could still play, and you could play different missions, and the books even say hey, you don't have to play these missions, just whoever wins, apply the correct campaign results based on who wins the mission. So it's we could definitely just switch to playing 11th edition games. I just think 500 Worlds is almost too slow. It kind of has to be by its nature, but it drags things down more than I like. I like having weekly games where things are constantly on the move, and just with as many people as you have to coordinate for that, it is just harder to do because you've got to have teams coordinate together, get their orders in, then you have to like do everything in order. Right now we're waiting for all the battles to resolve so then we can move on with the rest of the phase, and it's more ponderous than I liked. And I was hoping it would be a little bit faster, and it was easier when I was running campaigns where I could just like, okay, I'm just doing pairings, and then here's the weekly mission. Everybody's playing the same mission, and then we'll, based on the results of the mission, that will determine what happens next. And instead, it's like, all right, I'm waiting for a whole bunch of people to do a whole bunch of different battles and then report to me the results, and then we'll go through and apply all the changes based on the specific results of the battles, of the specific battles they chose. And yeah, it's the one I would least recommend out of all these. I think of any of these, like Maelstrom has a very nice campaign system. Apocalypse doesn't need a campaign system. An Apocalypse game is a campaign, as far as I'm concerned. And honestly, Armored Gauntlet had a very simple campaign system that you could apply. You don't necessarily have to be playing Armored Gauntlet to have fun with an Armored Gauntlet style campaign. You could just put any set of missions in there and do the same kind of free-based structure. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm landing, is that I think, it definitely goes Maelstrom. So it goes Maelstrom, Reign of Iron / Apocalypse, Return of Yarrick / Armored Gauntlet, and 500 Worlds / 500 Worlds in the Vespader Front campaign. Yeah, I think it sounds like that's where we're all pretty much landing on these narrative books. Still, no Crusade in sight, and nothing mentioned yet for 11th edition for Crusade. So we'll see what happens with that too.
Yeah.
And I've seen some people, I have seen some people online who are like, man, leveling up my characters and getting all the honor, like the battle honors and everything. That's my favorite part of Crusade. And I hope that don't take that away from me. And I'm like, you and I are very different people. But there's going to be something for everybody. And that is one of the things I do like about all these books, is there is a flavor here of 40K for everyone. And even if some of the tools are not my kind of game, it is good to have these tools out there. It is good to have these vehicle rules out there for the people who want to integrate them into their games. There is nothing wrong with them. I think they're fine. If you like the Vespader Front campaign, you like that big narrative, moving tokens on a planetary map to close in on your opponent and apply and build buildings and things like that. If that's your jam, awesome. If you like short, punchy pirate games where you're picking objectives and carrying off the table, Maelstrom is there, and Crucible of Champions slots in with everything. It's all good. And I'm glad we have all these pieces together. And I think it's a neat place to end 10th edition on, is having all these tools. And hopefully they will work with 11th edition decently well. But I think that just about wraps up episode 349, which... we're one episode away from 350, and that'll be the last episode, I think, before Midwest Conquest, which is...
yeah.
Yeah.
Coming up soon.
Because, Midwest Conquest, go to MidwestConquest.com. There's a Warhammer 40K GT. We've got a Warhammer 40K narrative event. There's Bolt Action, Age of Sigmar, Warhammer The Old World. We've got a lot of stuff going on. If you're able to be in the Kansas City area on Memorial Day weekend and you play 40K or any other of those games we mentioned, but primarily 40K, we would love to see you there. So again, MidwestConquest.com for details. Also, you can find all the events on Best Coast Pairings. Just search for Midwest Conquest. But yeah, that wraps it up for this episode. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks. But until then, I'm your host, Rob.
Kevin.
Dennis.
And Richard.
Good night, good gaming, and drive me closer so I can hit it with my sword.